Hello and welcome to another edition of Chiodini's Kitchen, video game recipes made real. Now this week we're tackling a much requested recipe from one of last year's best games. It's Stupendous Stew from Super Mario Odyssey. As you probably already know, one of the kingdoms in Super Mario Odyssey is the Luncheon Kingdom, a molten food-based area populated by the Volbonans. Its crowning glory is the Stupendous Stew, a dish Bowser steals to prepare for his upcoming wedding to Princess Peach. Before that happens, however, Mario gets a good look at the stew up close when he is kidnapped by a giant chef bird after turning himself into a massive slab of meat. There's a sentence I never thought I'd say on video. Anyway, having had a good look at the stew, I reckon it's a close variation on Japanese white cream stew, which is a popular Western influenced dish. It's something I've managed to find a recipe for online, but I've made a few tweaks to make it a bit closer to the in-game item, which is to say, I've swapped some of these vegetables out to match the ones in Super Mario Odyssey, and I'm gonna add back in the big slab of meat. So, for this recipe, you will need 1 onion, 4 cloves of garlic, a tablespoon of olive oil, about 400 grams of skinless chicken. I've gone for boneless thigh fillets because I'm feeling fancy today. 2.5 tablespoons of flour, 1 courgette, 1 medium potato, 2 medium carrots, a handful of button mushrooms because Super Mario, 700 millilitres of chicken stock, 120 millilitres of milk, and a tablespoon of butter. Right then, let's go! So step 1 is to cut up all of our vegetables. We're going to be dicing the onions and garlic very, very finely, but the rest of them we're going to leave fairly chunky. To use a professional chef's term, you want chunks of vegetable big enough for a small Italian plumber to jump on. And to make this step go a bit quicker, we'll be setting it to music, much in the same way we did when making Kirby's super spicy curry. Shout out to anyone who noticed I wasn't using button mushrooms there despite listing them as one of the ingredients at the start of the episode. Anyway, the next step is to cut up the chicken into manageable chunks on a separate chopping board. Very important, that bit. Just realised I completely forgot to mention the slab of meat in the ingredients list. I've got some ready roasted ham in the fridge, which we're not going to throw in until later, so don't worry about that for the minute, because step 1 in the actual cooking process is to start frying up the onions and garlic for a few minutes in the olive oil. So our onions are softening nicely. If anything, they've started to go brown, which is a sign that I've overdone it, but never mind. Either way, it means it is time for us to add in the chicken and stir it all together until the meat is thoroughly sealed. This is also a very good time to make your chicken stock if it's not already there, just to make sure you've got it to hand as and when you need it. Right, so our chicken is now thoroughly sealed, so we're actually going to turn the heat down under that for a minute, because then here come 1, 2, 2.5 tablespoons of flour, which we're just going to stir through here to coat everything, and that will help us build up a nice thick sauce once we actually start to add in the stock. Before the stock does go in, however, it's been about a minute or 2 since I added the flour, so now we're going to tip in all the rest of our veg and start cooking that up. This chopping board is too small. Okay, so everything's been sat in the pan for another minute or 2, so now it is finally time to add in our chicken stock. This is a measuring jug that's about 560 millilitres, so I'm also going to top this up ever so slightly with water from the kettle, just so we hit 700 ml. That'll about do it. And then we just need to turn the heat under that to bring it to the boil, and then we'll start simmering everything down. But of course not before we've added a decent pinch of salt and a good twist of pepper. Right, so as you can see, our Stupendous Stew is just about reaching boiling point now, so I'm going to turn the heat down to a nice even simmer Stick the lid on most of the way, still leaving a gap so some of that juice can evaporate. And we're going to leave that for about 20-25 minutes until the vegetables have softened and the whole thing has thickened up a bit. Okay, so it's been about 25 minutes now, and you can see, come on, autofocus, that has thickened up very nicely into a stew, and we've got those nice chunky vegetables which are cooked through and quite tender now. So there is just one more step, which is to add in a couple of ingredients, including the milk I mentioned earlier, and then a tablespoon, which is sort of a generous knob of butter. And we're going to stir this through, and this should give us the sort of the creamy base that you can see in the game, sort of whitening up the sauce a bit and making it taste a bit more buttery and decadent. There's the alarm telling me to put the milk and the butter in. So I'm just going to stir this through and then serve some up, and we can see what the Stupendous Stew is actually like. Except no, I won't, because we still haven't added in the slab of meat that I am just hell-bent on forgetting, apparently. We've got some pork in the fridge, like I mentioned earlier, and then promptly forgot. I'm going to cut it up and stick it in there. It's a him, Mario! Right, so steaming away quite aggressively on this spoon here, which means I'm probably about to burn my tongue, is some of Mario's Super Stupendous Stew. It certainly looks the part, but how does it taste? Let's find out. That is just so comforting. Like, it's heartier than I thought it was going to be, because the base of the stew is really simple. It's just stock simmered down with some flour in it, and then you add in some butter and milk, but it's rich without being overpowering, and the chunkiness of the vegetables means that there's quite a lot to get through, and it's just really wholesome. It's just tasty chicken with some nice ham in there, and then just some really good veg. That is really lovely sort of wintry food, which kind of makes you wonder why they're cooking it in a volcanic sort of molten kingdom like they are in Super Mario Odyssey, but nonetheless they're good cooks, I'll say that much for them. Well done, that giant bird chef. So there you go, thank you for joining me for another edition of Chiodini's Kitchen. I think this one was quite simple and really quite effective. We seem to be on a bit of a roll this year of things that aren't actually that hard to make, but taste pretty good. Still, I imagine if you try hard enough in suggesting recipes, I might be able to make something that's absolutely god-awful next week, so please do keep those recipe suggestions coming in. There are also plenty more videos you could watch from Eurogamer. Some of them are framing my face right now. Do like and subscribe because it really does help us out, but honestly, there's no pressure. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely day.